Hey everybody, this is Jim, the Tabletop Engineer, and welcome to a new Let's Paint a Mini video. Today I'm actually going to be painting two minis, or I'm going to try. The first one is called Yog-Sothoth. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't think anybody really knows how to pronounce any of H.P. Lovecraft's nasty creatures. But Yog-Sothoth is one of the bad guys, one of the big bad guys in the Cthulhu Death May Die game that I really enjoy playing. He's also got a minion. This one is Wilbur Whatley. And I'm trying to remember. This is from one of the stories, and I just went blank on which one. But Wilbur Whatley is one of the minor creatures that can be summoned in that game. And so I'm going to try to paint him as well. Now, Yog-Sothoth is, man, if you look at this nasty thing, this is one of those creatures that, honestly, if you did encounter in real life, you probably would go a little insane. It's a nasty looking thing of tentacles and teeth and just really, really horrible. On the box, it shows that he's sort of a very, very light tan color. So what I'm going to do today to paint him, I'm going to mix, I'm using speed paints. I'm going to mix holy white, a lot of this, with maybe one drop of the pallid bone and see what that looks like. Now, normally when I'm painting up a video, I like to chat with you about something that's on my mind, or a game, or whatever have you. So today, what I'm going to talk about, there's another game. If you play Cthulhu Death May Die, you may not be aware of another game from Fantasy Flight called Arkham Horror, the card game. And what I want to do is I want to talk about Arkham Horror, the card game, and why I love that game, and why you, if you're not a player of it, might want to look into it. I'll talk about how you can get into the game fairly inexpensively, and sort of what they share, what they don't. And I also would like to pitch an idea to CMON, come on, and maybe Fantasy Flight, and see about, man, I mean, they've got two great games here, but it would be so fun to play the investigators of one game in this one and vice versa. So while I'm painting, I'm going to chat about Arkham Horror. If you're already familiar with Arkham Horror, hopefully you'll agree with me on some of this stuff. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm shaking the bottle really well. I'm going to put out, I'm going to say 10 drops of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now that I think about it, I'm not going to use the pallid bone because I remember it's sort of a dirty white. Let's see what it looks like without any mixing. I don't know if you can tell, but it's sort of a grayish color. Now when it dries, it will dry white. But I'm thinking now that what it's going to do is dry a dirty white, which may be good enough for me. I'm just not sure. The problem with this pallid white, or not pallid, the holy white, is that I think it's going to be hard to tell where you've painted. So I'm going to do my best to try and remember. I'll start in one area and then work outwards rather than just moving the model around. I want to make sure I don't get double coverage, and I want to make sure that I don't miss any areas. All right, so anyway, let me talk to you about Arkham Horror. Arkham Horror, the card game, has been out for a lot longer than Cthulhu Death May Die, but not much longer. I think it was released in like 2012, maybe 2014. I'd have to go back and check my records, but it hasn't been out too long. Now, what it is, it's called a living card game, and by that, what it means is it's it evolves. The game can evolve. You can level up your hero. You create a deck, and the deck represents your investigator. And inside that deck are cards that will help you defeat the evil, that you're fighting. Now, with Arkham Horror, the card game, what they've done is they've created a story, a campaign. And the campaigns typically take 8. They're broken into 8 parts. All right, and you work your way from part 1 all the way to part 8. Hopefully survive. And by the time you reach part 8, you've resolved the story one way or the other. Either you succeeded or failed. But when you start out with scenario 1 of a campaign, If you lose it, it's not like you have to stop playing. Losing branches you off on a certain part of the story, and then winning a part. Usually winning's not winning. You're still fighting the big bad evil. You're just continuing deeper into the story, but you may not be as crazy in the head or physically damaged as you would be if you lost a part. Now, part 1 of a campaign is usually not as difficult, say, as part 2. And so part 8, by the way, by the time you get to the last part, usually you're in pretty bad shape. Your hero is beat up, lost some sanity that's permanent, lost some physical health, which is permanent. These are called traumas. So traumas carry over from part to part. And I say 8 parts because when you buy the introductory box, there's a core set of rules that you can buy. And they've upgraded it. We're not on version 2, but they did change the style of the game and how it's released. So now what comes is it'll come in 2 boxes. One is the investigator expansion, and one will be the investigation expansion. So the investigators comes with all the cards. Most of the boxes this size come with 5 investigators inside, plus all the cards you need to play that investigator. And then the expansion box contains the full 8-deck story. And it used to not be that way. It used to be that you bought a small box that had 2 investigators in it, and it had the first 2 parts of the 8-part series. And then you bought the expansion box, which had the remaining 6 parts. I know that sounds kind of confusing. It wasn't when it came out. But now what they've done is they're re-releasing the investigators and the campaigns in a 2-box thing. You don't have to buy both boxes. You buy one box if you want to play the campaign. You buy the other box if you want to get 5 investigators. So this right here is called the Scarlet Keys. This is the most recent campaign expansion. It has a full 8-part story in it that you can work through. And if you want the investigators, you go and buy the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. Now, I have a lot of the investigators from the previous way that they did things, with the small box moving up to the bigger box. And so I don't need necessarily to buy those. But if you missed those, you can buy like the Dunwich Legacy, or Dunwich... what was it? There was the Dunwich something. I can't remember. You can buy those again, but you don't have to buy them like I did or other previous players of the game had to. You can just now buy the 2 boxes. And they've also got some expansions. They've got one called, well, I knew I was going to forget the names. There's one where you go on an Arctic adventure. They've re-released the was it Carcosa, I believe. Anyway, they're slowly getting around to re-releasing all the old campaigns along with new ones. This one is a new one. This one never came in that old format. So it seems their pattern seems to be release one in the old format, release one that's completely new. Release one in an old format, release one that's completely new. So the idea is that you will eventually be able to play all the old campaigns, and those of us who have the old campaigns won't have to wait too long for new campaigns. So I'm real anxious to play this Scarlet Keys. It's unopened right now. Will I buy the investigators for it? Yeah, I'll probably go back and buy them because I don't have them in my current supply of cards. But it's really, I like this new way of doing it, because you could have, I think, 5 players sit down with both boxes in a set and immediately go to playing the game. The cards, the investigator expansion comes with all the cards you need to play those 5 investigators. So you could have 5 people sit down and start playing, and then the expansion provides the story. So, but why do I like Arkham Horror the card game? I have to tell you, I like it just as much as I do this Cthulhu Death May Die, because you take on the role of an investigator. It's not a competitive game. It is cooperative. So you're playing with other players to cooperate and try and beat the big bad. Both games offer a solo option, so you could play one hero or two. I usually play two. In Death May Die, I will play two investigators, and when I play a Arkham Horror Card Game, I will play two investigators. Now, there's an entire Facebook group dedicated to just playing one investigator. It's called True Solo. It's where you just play one investigator. And the game, Arkham Horror, does scale. Okay, it scales, so it's not as crazy. If you were playing 4-player, you would start out with a certain amount of, the deck is stacked against you in a certain amount. But if you play solo, you're not playing the exact same game. You start with fewer obstacles to overcome. They're called clues, by the way, in the Arkham Horror game. You're collecting clues to try and advance the story. So if you're playing a 4-story game, for example, it might take 10 clues to advance the first part of the story, whereas if you play with just one player, it might just take 2 to advance the story. So I hope you understand that the game does scale. Which is harder? Having played both, I will tell you that neither one of them is easy. Neither one of them is... They do come with levels of play. Now, Death May Die, not really. There's just... I would call Death May Die set on a standard. It's set on a standard level. With Arkham Horror, you can pick the standard level. You can also pick 3 others. One's called Hard, and one's called I just went blank on it. There's 2 more very difficult levels beyond the standard. I usually play that game on easy mode because I want the story. It's not easy in the sense that you can still die or lose. It's just you will get further into the story and you see the story expand. With the Death May Die game, it's just hard. I mean, you win or you lose. It's a coin flip. Not really. I mean, there is some skill to it, but there's also some randomness to it because you're rolling dice. With the Arkham Horror Card Game, the randomness comes from what you're called tokens. You don't roll dice. You reach in a bag and you pull out tokens that modify numbers. So you might pull out a token that's +1. You might pull out a token that's -2. You might pull out a token that's an auto fail, meaning it doesn't matter what number you roll, you're going to fail it. There's also an auto success token. Looks like an elder sign. There is randomness to both games. So you could draw really great for one game and still lose. You could draw really great and win the game that a lot of people might consider to be extremely difficult, a campaign or a story. And it all depends on your pulls, right? What you pull in the in the dice, or what you roll on the dice for this game, or the tokens for that game. I have won games by the skin of my teeth. I have lost games that I should have won, but I just pulled at the last bit. I just pulled some really bad tokens and I lost. And that is, I think, the whole thing about these Cthulhu games. I have played Cthulhu games with people who've never, ever played them, and they'll tell you, they're like, man, that was hard. I don't even know if we could have won that. And you're like, well, yeah, sometimes the Cthulhu games are stacked against you, or it feels that way when the game ends. They are traditionally hard to win. So a lot of people don't like Cthulhu mythos and the Cthulhu games because they just seem so hard. And for me, what makes it great is when you finally do win one, you really feel that sense of accomplishment. Like, wow, we really beat that. And the wins come so rarely, at least in my experience. Wins come so rarely that it really makes those when you do win, it just you float on it for days. All right, I don't know if you can tell, but this holy white. It's more of a gray. It is light, but it's going to look more grayish than anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this guy dry, because then I'm going to go after some of his tentacles with some pink color. But I need him all to dry. And then Watley here, what I want to do with him, I want to use, I think I'm going to use I think I am going to use the pallid bone on him. I don't want him to be dark. In the picture, he's a dark brown, gold, and I want the details to be able to be seen. So I'm just going to hit him with this pallid bone, and hopefully it's not too dark. He's all the same color except for his hooves, which I'll paint black, and he's got some horns on his head, which I may hit with white. We will see. This one, what I love about the speed paints is when you get a mini like this one, that they're all the same color. You know, the whole body is going to be the same color. That's where the word speed paint really comes in, because if I weren't talking to you, I'd probably already be done with him. Probably not true, but the speed paints, you just slap it on, and you don't want to let it pool. So I'm going back and I'm pulling down where I'm seeing it pool, like in his shoulder blades and below his neck. You don't want it to pool too much because it will become very, very dark, or in the eye sockets. But you just keep pulling it until it waters it down a little bit and it's not pooling some more, and then you'll end up with some nice coloration there. So he's going to be sort of a golden brown, and I can already tell this is working. I'm going to leave his hooves not painted because I'm going to hit those with that Gravelord Gray, which is like my version of black, but it's not so dark that you can't see the details. And since I paint the base black, I don't want the hooves to blend in with the black of the base. So I want it to slightly be a lighter color. That's why I'm going to leave them white for now and hit them with the Gravelord Gray, and then I'll paint the base black. Now, one of the things about Arkham Horror Card Game, like I said, it tells a story over 8 parts. It's a collector card game because as you buy more expansions and more decks, you can swap out cards for your investigators that you might not like a certain card that comes out when you're playing, and you can upgrade cards and you can replace cards. And there are expansions that people will go buy just because they might come with multiples of a certain card. And there really are no rules in the deck in terms of quantity of one type of card. There are a limit. You're usually limited to 30 cards in the deck that you draw from. And these decks have skills, but they also have what's called weaknesses. Now, in the Death May Die game, your character starts out with an insanity card. It's a personality trait that's usually negative and it doesn't help you. Well, in the Arkham Horror Card Game, you start out with a weakness, and that card is shuffled in. And when the weakness shows up, it usually doesn't favor you. It makes it harder for you to win the game. So both games have this element of a weakness or an insanity of some sort that your character has to deal with during their investigation. It basically represents the knowledge they have of what's not right in the world, right? They're already a little crazy because they already know all this secret stuff, and it's not helping their mind any, right? That doesn't look too bad. I like that. So the Arkham Horror Card Game, you can buy the core set, and it comes with a 3-part story called Night of the Zealot, not an 8-part. So you can sort of dip your feet in the water, see if you like it, and if you do, then you move on to the bigger expansions, which are 8-part tales. Right now, I'm gonna do bad. I think there's 7 in all. With the Scarlet Keys, which just came out, I believe there are now 7 campaigns that are out now that you can buy. There's Path to Carcosa. There's let's see. There's The Forgotten Age, which is like a jungle romp. It's sort of an Indiana Jones type story. There is The Circle Undone. What else is there? I should have made a list before I started. There's like I said, I think there's 7. I could be wrong. There might be 8, but I think Scarlet Keys was number 7. I could be wrong. Please correct me in the comments if you know for sure. But very, very fun game. Definitely a game that I play both. If you watch this channel, you'll know that I have. You'll know that I also have, while I record the Death May Die, I do record my sessions. I've just started. I'm replaying a lot of the games because I never recorded them and I want to replay them. So over time, I'm replaying the Arkham Horror Card Game, so you'll be able to see how that does. As a matter of fact, if you're interested, you can watch the first 3. I did post those. The Night of the Zealot 3-parter videos is up so that you can watch them and see if it's something you might be interested in playing. So before I finish up here, because I don't think that one's going to be wet for a while. It's very cold here in Atlanta. It's cold and damp. We've been having rain constantly, so that one may take a while to dry. But what I was going to tell you is what I would love to see, being that I'm a fan of both games, I would love to see some sort of booster pack made in cooperation with both companies. Now, I don't know how these corporations work. They may never do it. Companies sometimes will work together, like Zombicide, for example. Zombicide, which is part of the CMON, I know that they do expansions of like some of their games. They'll have crossovers with popular games, like I'm drawing blank, but I do know they do it. So what I think would be really cool is for Fantasy Flight and CMON to get together and say, okay, we will release some investigator cards for our investigators in our game to work with your game, and you in turn will take some of your investigators and make them for our game. I think that would just be it would be a nice expansion. It would help both games because people familiar with one can play the other and vice versa. Give us a reason to play both. Now, I will say this. People who play the Cthulhu games like me, we tend to be a different sort. You either like the Cthulhu universe, what they call the mythos. You either like Lovecraft's tales and his setting and his monsters and this whole universe, or you don't. I rarely find people who like it but don't play, or they play it and hate it. You really have to enjoy this setting and this kind of story to want to get into either game. But if you're into one, you're going to probably enjoy the other. If you've never played it, once you play it, you'll enjoy it. And so I have been playing this for some time. And when I discovered Death May Die, I knew right away. I was like, oh, I gotta get this game. And then once I played it, of course I loved it. So both games are heavily they are heavily favored towards the true mythos fan. Now, the other thing that the Arkham Horror offers, and I'll touch on this in a second, one of the things that Arkham Horror, the card game, offers is books. They have partnered with a publisher called Aconite, Aconyte, and they've released like 8 or 9 books now. I've read them all except for the latest one. And what's neat is in the books, they'll reference characters that you encounter in these games, investigators and like non-investigators, NPCs. Now, Cthulhu Death May Die, what they do is they release a comic book. It's a hardback book with a bunch of, it's like probably about 6 comic books in it, and it tells a story. And then what they do is they release miniatures and investigator cards for those 6 characters that you are introduced to in the comic book. So both companies really know how to, keep the fans on the lure, right? They release books, they release these extra miniatures and comic books, tales. And so I feel like both of these games are so close in what they want to give to the player. A story, right? A story, a sense of dread, a long shot to win. Those are all part of both games. And I just think it would be really, really cool if they could somehow come together and do a one-off. Just do it one time. Just do a one-off and maybe share between the games and allow players to discover the other game. If they're playing one, maybe they can play the other. All right, that's all I have for this video. I just wanted to get these painted real quick because I'm going to be playing a scenario very soon in Death May Die that I want a new big bad and a new minion. So I'm going to get these, as soon as these dry, I'm going to base him in black and get some of the tentacles painted pink, not a lot of them. Get his hooves repainted because they're not as dark as I wanted. And I think we're going to be done, and I'll be able to play with these. All right, this is Jim, the Tabletop Engineer. Thanks for joining me as this really wasn't painting. This was just slapping on a color on both minis, but it did give me an opportunity to introduce you to Arkham Horror, the card game, if you are not familiar with it. If you are familiar with Arkham Horror, if you're watching this video and you're familiar with Arkham Horror and you have not played Cthulhu Death May Die, you really might want to give it a look. It's an incredible game. They're all one-shots. There's no ongoing there's seasons. This one has like seasons with 6 episodes, and then season 2 has 6 episodes, and season 3 and season 4 are, I believe, they're going to start fulfilling this year, so we'll see. All right, that's all I have. I will take some after shots of these once they're finished painting and drying and put them at the end of this video, and I'll be back very soon with another Let's Paint a Mini video. Until then, this is Jim, the Tabletop Engineer. Everybody, take care.